Welcome all. Today is the 12th of March, 2015. Chad, I think this is our 16th Mastermind call. Is that correct, or 15th?
16th.
16th Mastermind call. So we've been at this for 4 months. Time flies when you're having fun. And there's about 15 of us on the call today, and I'm sure people will be signing in as we go. We were chatting a little bit before I turned the recording on about some of the results that David has been getting. Mike is brand new today. Katie, Lydia, Glenn, any wins that you can share with the group, or any questions you have for the group?
Not yet. This
Okay.
is Lydia.
Lydia, you're just getting started also, correct?
That is correct.
Okay. And Katie, has Juanita done her first mailing yet? Has she started making calls?
I honestly do not know. It's very possible. She's currently in Tennessee, and I'm in Alabama, so I'm just kind of subbing today. But knowing Juanita, she's absolutely on top of it.
She's a hustler, no doubt.
She is a definitely hustler.
Chad, anything you want to share with the group this week?
I don't know. Let's get started. I'm sure something will come out.
Okay. Yeah. I don't have any. Usually I'll give you guys a news flash or something, other than the fact that we are growing exponentially. We added Mike this week, and I think 4 or 5 other new clients. We're getting. I always tell people in the initial conversation that I think we've had over 100 people sign up to date. We've only had 8 people cancel out of 100, which is pretty good cancellation rate. And every single one of them, I spoke to them before they canceled, and they just ordered the leads, and they didn't do anything with them. So all you guys on the call know you got to take some. Ordering them doesn't get you business. You got to. Some realtors use the flavor of the month club. Let's just try this, try that, and you guys that are doing this and sticking with it, we're getting some amazing results across the country.
I have. This is Michael. I have a question. Being new, I was
Please,
going
Mike.
through the back end of the website and looking at different letters and so on and so forth. And unless I'm missing it, is there? All the letters seem to be geared towards sending them out saying I have an investor, and not geared towards being I'm the realtor looking to help you. Or is there something I'm missing in the back end of the website of a letter that I'm sending out as a realtor?
And Chad's our coach. I'll let him answer that in detail. The intent of that letter, though, Mike, is in most cases, 90% of the cases, these agents have heard from nobody. I mean, these sellers have heard from. If they've heard from anybody, it might be an investor or two, looking to basically steal the property. So the intent when we wrote those letters was to give the seller multiple options, and let them know, yeah, I have an investor too that'll buy the house for cash. However, if you're looking to get full value, here's what I can bring to the table. So I think most of those letters were written with the intention of, instead of telling the seller what they should do, giving them options. If somebody else offered a quick, we buy a house quick, I mean, you can do that. You can provide the same thing as a realtor. What I always tell the people that call me, with me, you get the best of both worlds. Yeah, I've got somebody that will pay cash and close quick. However, we can probably get you a lot more by listing it. And the good news is that investor offer will still be on the table. So if your situation changes, if we go a month or two and the property hasn't sold, you still have the option of a quick sale. So,
okay.
Chad, anything you want to add to that?
Yes. Those letters were written after several hundred appointments, I would say, and several thousands of dollars of wasted money in direct mail. And with direct mail, especially in the fashion we send it, it's interruption-based marketing. So it's showing up in a greeting card envelope with a first-class stamp. It looks like a birthday card, feels like a birthday card, gets a 100% open rate. And just like internet marketing, you've got about a half a second to get someone's attention. So if it looks like a typical farming letter or realtor letter or just listed, just sold, it just ends up in the trash. And the point is to interrupt them, whether they're preparing dinner or they're coming in from soccer practice or they're in the middle of work, whatever they're doing. It's to be something different. And what I've found in my experience is you can build rapport and open the conversation much easier as a realtor than you can as an investor. But as a realtor, you need to have something to offer that no one else has ever offered them. And that is, hey, I work with cash buyers. I have a ready, willing, and able buyer. So you're opening the door as a buyer's agent. You're not asking them for a listing. And then you lead into that conversation a little bit later in the letter. Now, there's different letters. You'll see probate letter 1, 2, and 3. Those pretty much open the door as a buyer's agent with a cash buyer, and then slightly offer a couple other options. One of our clients in Central Florida wrote, if you see the letter, I think I called it probate options letter. That is more of a, hey, I'm a realtor. I've been in the market for X number of years. Here's 4 bullet points of how I can provide value. He's done extremely well with that letter. And it's all about something different. And if you don't have a cash investor, my advice is get one into your business, whether you do probate or not. You should have a half a dozen cash investors that can buy a house on the spot. So that's what we found produces the most results. If you send a typical We Buy Houses letter, a lot of people don't trust it because they don't know that business. They don't know what you're trying to do. If you send a generic farming letter, they won't call you because it blends in. So we tried to hit somewhere in the middle, something that was unique, something because really the only point of that letter is to get the phone to ring. It's to interrupt them, educate them a little bit, whet their appetite, and get the phone to ring. And you'll do you earn the business once the phone rings. The letter doesn't really get you the business; it gets you a phone call. So that's just kind of the background on it. We've tested everything. Honestly, what works best in my market is the 1, 2, 3 sequence. Letter 1, letter 2, letter 3, and I've even tested the options letter, sending that, and my response fell off drastically. So as much as every time I go back to try to rewrite letter 1, 2, and 3, it just works. So I've just kind of stuck with what I found worked in my market. I did a test letter this past week before last. I sent a 3-page letter that was very much like kind of a Gary Halbert or Dan Kennedy style, like early 80s copywriting sales letter. And it was a big bold headline with bullet points and boxes, a story in the middle of why I got into probate, and a pretty detailed story of how I helped a lady sell her house after an expired listing for $5,000 more, and we had people fighting over the house. And then ended that with, by the way, here's the ways we can help, and a PS. I got a ton of web traffic off the letter because I put my domain name at the bottom of every letter, but I had a 0% call rate on 80 mail pieces. I got no phone calls. First time that's ever happened. So we're constantly testing and proofing new letters, and I mean I encourage you to do that. It's just like Jay Abraham says, there's no such thing as a marketing budget, test budget. So if you guys are writing your own letters and testing them and you find one that works, please jump on Facebook and throw it into the files so we can all test it in our markets. But those are the ones that have produced the most revenue since we started this. That's why they're there and written the way they are.
And you're finding that you're using those green envelopes that are on the website?
No, we actually use usually the mail that we're using now. It's typically a pastel blue, like blue, peach, pink. There's certain things that the USPS can actually read their machinery, so we go with pastel colors so we're sure that our deliverability stays high and it doesn't get kicked into the junk bin.
Mike, I posted that link on the website because those are the ones that I use, and they're unusually cheap for a colored sized envelope that big. I think they're 6 or 7 cents a piece, which is really, really cheap, and they always seem to have that discount going. But you can order them in different colors. It doesn't matter. You just want it to look like a wedding invitation or a birthday card. You don't really want to make it look like junk mail or business mail.
What size envelope is that?
Do you know, Chad?
I don't know the dimensions at the tip. It's a standard greeting card envelope. I honestly, I don't know the dimensions. It's probably like 6 by 8, maybe, I think.
Yeah, it sounds right.
Because if you're using an odd-sized envelope, are you also using paper that you could print on to put it in there? I don't want to take an 8.5 by 11 piece of paper and fold it up like a game puzzle and stick it in the envelope?
No, it just folds in half. So like the one that I use, you just fold it once and it goes inside. And we have guys like we have just transitioned from using a mail house to bringing it in house. So we're actually doing our own mailings now. We had a mail house that had incredibly low rates, and the communication back and forth was, and David, I know you're biting your lip right now, David Bryant. It just didn't work. It was hard to scale because it was a third party. So we've now got mail in house. So we can print the envelope, print the letter, customize it, do your mail merge, and get it out the door for, depending on your count, less than $1.50 a letter. A lot of national companies are charging upwards of for less than 100 letters because you pay like drop-off fees and all this other stuff. I know I used to pay as much as $3 a letter for a small batch mailing, but I didn't have an assistant at that point, and I didn't have time to do it, so I just did it. So I think you're going to find are probably have better pricing than any mail house out there that can do this style of mailing, and we can automate it for you. And my advice is, you'll hit kind of critical mass, but at 90 days, if you run this campaign and you do 3 letters per list, at 90 days, you're going to have 9 letters floating around out there. So my advice is get your letters in place, make one order, and set it up in your calendar. And what I coach people, get your list, scrub it however you need to if you're going to scrub it. Order your mail, your 3-touch sequence or however many touches you want to do. Put that into Google Calendar, and then set call reminders for the day you think the letter is going to hit in the mailboxes. And we send first-class mail, so typically within 3 business days of the mail drop, your phone should be ringing. But what I also do is I kind of work these in tandem. So when I know a letter is hitting, I make sure to place a phone call. And you always have something to reference in the phone call. Hey, this is Chad. I sent you a letter this week. I just wanted to make sure you got that and understood why we sent it to you, and see if there's any way we can provide value to you and the family. And if they didn't get the letter, then you can say, oh, well, and tell them what the letter said and the reason for your call. So it's not exactly, it's kind of a warm call, not just a cold call. So my advice would be either in-house or with us or with another mail company, systemize automate your mailing as quickly as possible, because it does get overwhelming. And then get used to putting it in the calendar so you know exactly when those dates are going to hit, and you can learn from I got overwhelmed at about month 2 with an assistant. We were doing mail in-house, and we were trying to keep all the calls scheduled and everything. So if you do it all on day 1, you'll spend about 2 hours per list to market for 90 days. And it just kind of runs on autopilot.
And by the way, guys, I don't know if you know my background. I was a realtor for 35 years. I coached for Mike Ferry for about 10 years. I was an investor. I have a short sale company. You don't need to know my life story, but I've run into a lot of coaching companies and coaches over the years, and Chad is about as good as they come. I know he spent time with you individually on an introductory call, and he is offering individual coaching if you're interested. And I mean, is Sandra Marconi? I don't think she's on the line, but how many?
She's skiing.
Oh, she's skiing. Sandra she's a classic example. She's in where is she? She's in Texas.
Houston area.
And how many leads is she getting a month?
Around 500, 400 to 500.
Getting 5. She's already a very busy agent. All of a sudden, she gets 500 new leads a month. And honestly, within 3 days, she was to the point where I can't handle this. This is crazy. I want to quit. And Chad just kind of took her by the hand, and over the course of a few calls, he analyzed the systems that she has, and she really integrated, the probate into what she's doing. So, so she could stay sane and actually maximize the leads that she's getting. And he's available to do that for any of you.
And it was the coaching was kind of born out of necessity, guys. So what I've learned is even if you have a 30-year veteran, it's kind of overwhelming to get it firing on all cylinders in the first 30 days, and it is an expensive campaign, but it's also one that will have you showing up at houses with no competition and come list me calls, basically. So it's worth putting the effort in. But what I've learned is if we turn people loose, a lot of times they, even though they have the resources on the Facebook page or these recorded calls, it just doesn't get done. So we have what we call a jumpstart consultation, and I've broken it down into 3 sessions. The first session is strategy, so getting your why in place. Why are you doing this? What's your ultimate goal? How can you provide value? The next is systems. How do you handle mail? How do you handle phone calls? How do we handle your database management? Do you need a database? And then the last one is on sales, and that's really about what to say. By that time, we've got leads, we've gotten them into the system. There's mail, the letters are in the mail. And by the time we get to the sales call, that's, what do you say when the phone rings? It's a combination of role playing, scripts, just kind of walking through it. And each of those 3 sessions are customized to that individual's business. So, my goal is to learn as much as I possibly can about you, your business, and your goals before we start. And then I'll pull it apart and show you how I think we can most efficiently integrate this. And so far, we've had a lot of really good success in markets ranging from, Los Angeles to small towns and single individual agents. So if I'm here as a resource, if you guys are interested in that, we have a questionnaire you can fill out and kind of get started, and we'll do it, 3 consecutive weeks. So after each session, you have a week to kind of get the pieces in place and do your homework before we move to the next stage. But if you sign up and buy leads today, by the time your leads are ready and your mail is ready, I promise you'll be ready. You'll be leaps and bounds ahead of everyone else, because I can show you what we've learned over, like I said earlier, thousands of wasted dollars. We can get you through that learning curve. So.
And Chad, go ahead. Question?
The letters that you're sending out, the multiple letters, how often are you sending them out?
I use 30 days.
30-day cycle? Yep.
So it's a 90-day campaign. And I recommend at a minimum you do 3 letters and 3 phone calls. I'm a lazy prospector, so I replace my phone calls with ringless voicemail. So I can call. I usually hit 3 months at a time. So on the day that a letter hits, like I get my sequence in sync where I have like letter 2 from list 1 and letter 1 from list 3 hitting on the same day. So I know I've got letters being delivered across 3 lists. So then I can coordinate my phone calls where I can call 200 people in 5 minutes or less. And it's in my office, it's all truly inbound marketing. So I list about 2 homes per 100 leads, and they're all, for the most part, come list me. My phone rings, I disarm them or educate them. I got my 20-second pitch to really help them understand why they got that mail. And it usually turns from a kind of a cold prospect to, oh my gosh, that's awesome. I'll set the appointment for the next day and go list it. So for the people who are out there that actually do have better prospecting habits than I do, that can do outbound calls, you're going to do like David Bryant's office. I mean, that first round of calls, I think they had a 10-to-1 ratio. They called 250 people and set like 25 appointments. And that was without even doing mail. So I would say...
Question. Go ahead. I'm sorry, I thought you were done.
Go ahead.
The 200, when you're doing your comparisons, like 2 leads for 200, was there anything looking at it to say, to give an indication to us that, but of the other 198, as I watched it, only 30 of them ever came to market, so it's really 2 out of, 32, because the other people never sold their homes?
I haven't tracked it. I know that of all the people who pass away, on average, and I have tracked this, around 66% of deceased will actually own real estate at the time of death. The other percentage, they either conveyed it into a trust or otherwise, $0 transferred to a family member before death, or they just didn't own real estate. Now, of those 66%, statistically, and I haven't tracked it, I've heard other people say statistically 90% of them will sell the asset. it really varies market by market. So like, where I grew up, nobody ever sells property. It's a small community, it's rural, it's family land, and nobody ever sells. In a city, I'd say 90% or more of properties are going to convey within city limits. 90% of those are going to sell because the kids bought a house in the suburbs or out of state or somewhere else. So I really haven't tracked. I haven't, and I'd love to know that. I'd love to see that data too, but I haven't tracked the other. Like if I mail a list of 80 people and list 2 houses, I don't know where the other 78 ended up.
Yeah, the statistics that I have seen, and I've done some research on it, that of the ones that have real estate, about 60% sell within 6 months and about 90% sell within a year. I think I shared with you guys, I got a call a couple weeks ago for a $2.5 million house. I had sent the guy a letter just about a year ago, and it was a very affluent estate, and there were multiple heirs, and they were fighting with each other, and it took a long time to settle it. And that's another thing that we mention on these calls. These leads do have a significant shelf life. It's when we get you the information, typically it's been about 60 days since the people passed away. Most of these people, a vast majority of them I talk to, have no intention of doing anything until the probate's completed. In Florida, that's 3 or 4 months from the time it's filed. It can be longer. One of the first things that I always say to them is, and it says it in our letter also, is, did you realize that, you may or may not be able to convey the property. There's, depending on how the will was written, in some states you can actually convey the property. The proceeds just have to go into a trust. But majority of the time, you need to wait until the probate is completed. And what I always tell the sellers is you may not be able to close for a few months, but we can use this downtime to get the property listed, get it marketed, get it sold, and there's a good chance by the time the probate's completed, we can be ready to close. So take advantage of the downtime. But most of the heirs that I speak to don't think that they can do anything, or they don't intend to do anything until the probate's completed, which is so you've got a good 3 to 4 months before most of these people start looking in the yellow pages or making outbound calls to look for a realtor. So that, that's one of the beauties of it, is that very few other agents are calling them. It's very rare I run into any seller who says they spoke to another agent. I understand there's some places like LA where it's more competitive, but and I run into very few people. I don't think I've ever run into one that I called that already had the property listed. Chad, have you ever run into any that were already listed?
Yeah, quite a few. I think David Bryant and his team, like Mitch, I think they've hit that too. They had some questions about it. I think that might be market to market too. Here, typically, when you look back at the history, you talk to the seller and it's already listed. It's usually because the parent went into a nursing home, and they saw what was happening, and they just were being proactive to take care of the debt. That's typically what I see here.
Excellent. Good questions, guys. We got about 25 people on the call. Anybody else have any questions? Any places you're getting stuck? Anything the group can help you with?
This is Tammy at Agents with a Smile in Idaho, and I was just going to say I do have some numbers that we can add to give everybody an idea of what we're getting so far. We got our first batch, and we bought the previous 3 months as well. So we had about 175 leads. We have not actually physically dialed anyone yet. We just sent out the options letter, and then we did the ringless voicemail. And we've had 7 people call back out of the 175 just without actually picking up the phone yet. Out of the 7, we have 3 that sold already, 4 that we are working with. So 4 people, 5 properties that we're pretty sure that we'll get all 5 listings. And we haven't actually called anyone yet. So that's something that we're going to be doing tomorrow. We're actually going to be picking up the phone and calling everyone who has not called back yet. So
I would love it. Thank you.
Yeah, you're very welcome. So I just thought that would be a little piece to add to, we haven't physically called out to anybody yet. We just used your system and what you have on there. And that's our response so far. So with those people, the one thing that I would say that really helped us to capture the people that we did talk to that haven't sold yet is that we had our team in place. So we automatically had an estate planning company to refer them to. We had a clean out crew available. So we have people that we've already put together that we knew would be key team players. And so we had those people in place already to help. So we have one of them that has 2 homes. They're going to be listing with us in April. And the only reason it's not listed yet is we have our teams in place who are helping them with the estate sale and the clean out crew. And once that's done, then we'll be listing.
Yeah, that's awesome. Thank you for sharing.
Yeah.
And just to clarify, that's after 1 letter and 1 ring of voicemail, correct?
That's correct.
Yeah. So that's phenomenal. 7 out of 175, and that's awesome. And that's
Tammy,
something
I had a quick question, Tammy. How many of those 7, or in maybe the 5 that you're going to get, how many of them were physical appointments, and how many of them were just phone conversations?
Well, we actually set appointments for all of them. One of them lives in Southern California, and he's already told us that he's going to list with us just because of the resources that we have available.
Great.
So when he comes from Southern California to Idaho, then we'll be meeting with him and listing the house. So we have 3 appointments out of the 7, but we have 5 properties identified that we're just working out the last few details, and they've already, stated that they're going to be listing with us, and it's simply because of the resources that we already had in place. So that's where I would say, having a team in place or have somebody that you can refer them to, that was in our market, that was a big deal. That seems to be what is really the selling point when we're talking to people. So the only ones that we're not getting are people who have sold already.
And Tammy, are you finding that there's any competition or any of them telling you we're talking to other agents?
No, and I will tell you, too, I just pulled up my list, and of the 4 people that we're in contact with, one of them is from August, the deceased date, August, September, and 2 in November. So it does show you that, the shelf life is definitely there for a while as far as from the date of death to when we're calling them or reaching out to them. It's definitely worth buying those previous 3 months for sure.
Great.
Yeah, and my last 2 listings were from my August and September list, and they haven't received a piece of mail for months, but they held on to what they had because of the style of direct mail piece.
Well, the ones that called us back as well, they called back off the ringless voicemail, and they all identified that they remembered getting the letter from us. So it was a nice tie-in. They were automatically familiar with us when they got the voicemail because they had already received the letter. So I think that was a nice piece, and I think that's why they were so responsive is because we gave them so much value and information in that first letter that went out that it wasn't a big deal when they talked to us.
Yeah, and guys, Tammy is I'm so excited to hear you say that. Like you have done everything perfectly in the right order, the way it's supposed to be done. And for the people that are new to the call, anyone who's been on these calls, you probably just tune me out because I know you've heard it. But it's vital that you get your why in place. Understand why it is you want to do this strategy, and it shouldn't just be about commission dollars. And the next step is get your team in place. So you need an attorney or a title company that's really good at unraveling, that's really good at keeping emotions at bay and unraveling title messes. You need an estate sale company that will sell anything from a Victrola to an entire house full of antiques. You need a nonprofit or a cheap laborer that will do clean outs and just, trash outs if you come across hoarder houses or, personal property that's not really of much value. Get a crew that's going to clean it out and donate as much as they can and trash the rest. You need good contractors that will do anything from small punch list stuff like recalking tubs and, putting in receptacles to full-blown rehabs. And once you get those key players in place and you got your why in place, you're unshakable on the phone. So when somebody calls, you confidence comes through in your voice. They can just tell that they called the right person. And most people who respond in my office they truly need help. I sold a house in 4 business days from a lady that said, I don't need a realtor to help me. I've had it on the market for 6 months and I'm doing just fine. And I challenged her, and I said, I think you're going to be glad you called me. And she responded to a ringless voicemail. She was very distrusting. And I got in trouble because I sold the house too quick. I sold the house before the electrician could get there and do the service upgrade. And it was all because I had confidence in my system, my team, and the value that I could provide her, and I didn't let her shake me. And the people that have quit so far, everyone that's quit they haven't gotten those two things in place. They haven't gotten real clear on their why, and they haven't gotten the team in place. And they didn't fail because the leads sucked. They didn't fail because they didn't have strong enough systems. They either failed because they didn't do anything, or they didn't have the confidence they needed after they did something. And that's Tammy. I'll end my rant there, but Tammy's a prime example. Like, her team, they just took it and went with it. They said, all right, here's a system. They listened, and look, they're going to list 5 houses off of one round of marketing. Have you ever listed 5 houses for that little money, Tammy?
Well, I can tell you, here's a kind of an additional piece. I'm brand new in the business. I just basically followed what you had in place already. I was just in real estate school 3 months ago. So I just followed what you had, You said, do this, follow this, and you'll get results. So that's exactly what I did. I'm the inside sales agent here in the office. And so, basically I'm creating this division within our office and expanding our business. So I am fortunate that I'm part of an amazing team. However, it does show you that you don't have to have experience. You just have to follow the process. And so, I'm brand new. So,
Tammy, where did you go to get the people, like the people that'll clean out the house, et cetera, et cetera? Where did you just do some research?
Yeah, I started just on Google first, and just researched it on Google, and then I reached out and I checked reviews and just made phone calls to other agents to find out, who they use, who they prefer. So I just reached out to other agents in the area after finding some information and find out, who uses clean out crews, and I reached out to them, say who's the best, who can I trust.
Yep. And I think something Tammy said, like, the best thing is reach out to a senior agent, maybe even a retired agent, and they're going to have an awesome vendor list, and say, hey, Bill, who do you use for this, or this? And a lot of agents, especially if they're in your office, they'll share their vendor list with you, and you can, especially with contractors, there's plenty of bad apples with contractors' license, and finding that one that's going to do what he says and do it on schedule and on budget is vital. So I would say at least that one, get a personal referral. Craigslist is a good place to find clean-out crews, but again, you got to be aware of bad apples. So referrals are always the best way if you can find a senior agent that's willing to share their list.
Yeah, our brokers have an amazing vendor list, so that's always a good place to start as well. We're part of Keller Williams, and I know that agents are really amazing at helping each other. So we have the team that I'm with, we already have some people that we do business with, so we've already used them, and we knew that we could trust them. But there was a few pieces that we were missing, and so we basically, for estate companies, we interviewed them and wanted to know, what can you offer? And we checked their references and we checked their reviews and things like that. But I think starting with your broker and starting out with your senior agents to find out who they use and who they can vouch for is a really strong place to start, so you're not just starting out cold. But beyond that, we interviewed people to make sure that they are who they say they are.
Great advice, Tammy. Thank you. You made the call this week. I think Chad and I should we'll go prospect at real estate schools, because people like you have no bad habits. and
That's true.
The fact that you're willing to be coachable says a lot. It really does. We really appreciate that testimonial. We're about out of time, guys. We try to keep these calls at 30 minutes. Tammy, we can't thank you enough. Is there anybody else that has anything real pressing that you need answered this week, or should we all get back to work?
Where do you find the option letter?
On the back end of our website. Who is that, Lydia?
Yes.
Lydia, if you go to the website, alltheleads.com, and you go to the subscriber tab and put in your code, all that information's on the back end of the website.
Oh, okay.
So Lydia,
Okay. Thank you.
Lydia,
Where I found the letter.
you're in the Facebook group. It's also in there. If you go to the Mastermind group and you go to files, it's all in there.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you, guys. We really appreciate your time. Tammy, thank you so much. Everybody who contributed. Mike, welcome to the team. Mike, if you're not on, anybody who's not on the Facebook group, let us know. That's where this call will be posted on Facebook probably within the hour. And guys, get out there and share a story like Tammy did with us next week. We appreciate you guys coming today. Make it a great week.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right. Take care, everybody.